battery manufacturing webinar. My name is Ryan Wood, the Content Marketing Manager here at Epic. Before we get started, just want to let you all know that you'll be muted during the presentation. For those of you who've attended our webinars in the past, you may notice a slight difference as GoToWebinar recently updated its interface this week. So if you run into any issues there, just please let us know. Also, if you do have any questions as we move through the webinar, please enter them in the questions panel, which is in the webinar control panel, and we'll try to get to all of them at the end of the presentation. If we don't have time to go through all your questions, we'll reply to you by email. And we'll be recording this webinar and posting both the recording and slides on our website and YouTube channel. Our presenter today is Anton Beck, our battery product manager. Anton came to Epic with over 25 years of electronics manufacturing experience. His background includes all manufacturing processes from design to fabrication. Anton is consistently focused on developing our battery design and manufacturing infrastructure to continually improve our value-added supply chain organization. Anton's responsibilities include overseeing our design team, product prototype development, tooling and test processes, regulatory and approval management, and subcomponent supply chain to ensure Epic's world-class standards to our customers are maintained. Anton oversees hundreds of custom battery pack design projects, and he has extensive experience with medical devices, UL, CE, UN DOT, and military power electronics applications. So without further ado, I will pass it on over to Anton.
Thanks, Ryan. So welcome to our webinar, everyone. Let's discuss the gap between quote price and real program costs. Offshore supply can work, but only when the support structure is strong. Today's agenda will give an overview of battery manufacturing landscape, why overseas manufacturing appears to be cost effective at first when you first look at it, the hidden costs that impact the total cost of ownership that people don't even realize, and the quality control and certification challenges, along with supply chain stability and geopolitical considerations. Battery demand is pulling more buyers towards overseas quotes and quick turn promises. The surface level often leaves important details out. So China factories are expanding continually and advertising into the U.S. markets. If anyone has ever dealt with a China inquiry, you get pummeled with China emails as far as them trying to promote something. I know I do. They offer low-price standard battery pack manufacturing with attractive lead times, but of course there's challenges that you don't see on the surface. Our next few slides will focus on costs that are usually outside the first quote, and the purpose is not to dismiss offshore sourcing, but to evaluate it realistically. Battery pack pricing through a broker or even direct with a China company, the pricing always looks attractive. But what are the hidden costs? Minimum order quantities that might apply, paying for the order up front before you receive it and can inspect it. Usually it's very difficult to get terms with a China company unless you have a developed relationship with them. Communication challenges throughout the design and the certification process. And how do you recover if there's an issue with the battery packs? Development, speed, rework, compliance, and storage can all affect margins, the real hidden costs that impact the cost of ownership. Additional hidden costs include delays in logistics, shipping, prototypes in production, that's total different shipping methods, tariffs and duties. Right now it's at 25%, but you know that fluctuates and it can change at any time. And inventory carrying costs. How will you keep the batteries maintained during storage at optimal state of charge? If you're having to take large quantities with high minimum order quantities, you're going to have to plan on how you're going to maintain those if you don't use them right away, or work with your customer on how they plan on using them if they don't go through them quickly. The total cost of ownership is often miscalculated. One of the biggest mistakes is focusing on just the unit price instead of the system cost. Shipping rates, tariffs, component shortages, and currency swings can easily erase savings. Frequent international travel for audits, debugging, and supplier management adds up fast. So if there's issues and you have to get on a plane and go to one of those suppliers, that's additional cost that you don't consider. The net effect of a 20% cheaper offshore quote can end up more expensive over time. When there's a custom battery pack required, the challenges become even greater. Unless you have an established relationship and business model that has a proven qualified process, include logistics expertise, engineering, and quality, you may encounter some of the following. Communication and engineering, iteration, friction. Battery pack development is iterative. There's the thermal design, BMS tuning, mechanical. That's a complex combination there. Offshore adds time zone delays of iteration cycles, answering questions, language interpretation gaps in specs, difficulty debugging issues in real time. If there's a problem with a program or software, it's difficult to resolve it over emails or even Teams calls. This slows development and can delay the product launches, which is even more costly than manufacturing itself. In this next section, we'll discuss potential safety and compliance risks. Let's go over some of the most damaging hidden quality issues. Counterfeit or spec drift components. This is more common than you may expect. Counterfeit or downgraded cells can enter the supply chain, depending on availability and who you're working with. Suppliers may substitute materials to hit target price many times without even telling you. And they may quote one thing and build with another. Commercial grade parts may not meet your actual performance requirements. And these issues don't often show up until after deployment, when the failures occur. Quality control and certification challenges. Battery packs meet strict standard UL and IEC, the UN 38.3 transportation spec, FDA, etc. And if you have any certification failures, it can require redesigns, and regulatory changes and component changes, with or without your knowledge, can force requalifications. And then who's liable for that? Liability is harder to manage across jurisdictions. Certifications themselves can exceed $100,000 in costs, especially if you have to do them multiple times. And if something goes wrong, we use fire as an example, that's worst case. Tracking responsibility across borders is messy and expensive. No one wants to take accountability for that. So let's discuss some potential global risks. One disruption upstream can affect the entire production plan. Battery manufacturing is deeply tied to global supply chains, heavily reliant on overseas material and components. Risk of export restrictions, trade disputes, or tariffs. Long lead times, often months for key components. If anyone has ever tried sourcing ICs, you know the challenges there. Sometimes they're available. Sometimes there's backlog of 52-week lead times. In extreme cases, you may not be able to ramp up the production after you get the prototype approvals when demand spikes. Or you could lose access to supply entirely during geopolitical tension. Components or raw materials are diverted by the government. They choose where these go, not necessarily your order. Logistics complexity for lithium and nickel metal hydride are different. Lithium batteries are regulated hazardous goods. Special packaging, documentation, and transport restrictions apply. Shipping delays due to safety compliance checks. If anyone has ever had a sample or a shipment get hung up in customs, it's like pulling teeth to get that out of there. It's very difficult. Sometimes they're tied up there for weeks, sometimes months. And sometimes they get lost and you don't ever see them again. Higher insurance and handling costs and certifications for the battery pack and shipper are all required. You're not just shipping electronics, you're shipping regulated hazardous materials, which complicates everything. If there's IP leakage and competitive risk, that's what you may encounter dealing direct with China. When manufacturing is offshore, design, firmware, and processes are harder to protect. So the same supplier may be working with some of your competitors, so some things may leak. Reverse engineering is easier once production is externalized, and this is especially risky if fast-moving sectors like consumer and industrial, where lowest cost is usually the deciding factor. So let's compare offshore sourcing with domestic battery pack supply partnership. Let's discuss sourcing with a domestic partner on how it improves speed and response time. Without an offshore partner, you have the inability to respond, and speed is underrated. If demand spikes or a defect appears, you can't easily walk the factory floor. You're not physically there. Fixes take weeks instead of days, going back and forth with emails and photos and Teams calls. Production challenges require negotiation, not execution. And who's responsible? This lack of agility is often a hidden strategic cost. What you need from a battery pack supplier is a US-based supplier with a track record, selective qualified factories for specific technologies. Not all factories build the same type of products or at the same technical level or the same quantities. A team of actual employees in China that includes daily verified, and you see verified is emphasized, communications. A quality team that oversees final inspection and audits factories as required. And by verified, we mean it's real. If anybody's dealt with China, they say yes a lot, and it's hard to determine what's factual. An experienced domestic engineering team that works closely with the China engineering team to resolve any questions 24 hours a day. And that's we work with staggered shifts to be able to manage any questions on the spot and keep things moving. How Epic differentiates up front. Our custom battery pack development process includes upfront design review, customer collaboration with precise drawing approvals prior to prototyping. And sometimes there's iterations 3 or 4 or 5 times before anything moves forward, just to make sure that everything is built precisely. Customer prototype approval prior to certifications or production. And that means the prototype in the customer's hand, not just bench testing, but product level testing, sometimes field testing that could take weeks and up to months before anything moves forward to make sure that the design is locked down. And we manage all required battery pack certifications. We do that in China. We can do it domestically, but we also have very good controls over there. Being a hybrid manufacturer, manufacturing at our facility near Boston, Massachusetts, and in China, we have the options. And significant investment in US engineering in terms of personnel and equipment to ensure a fast and efficient design process. US quality teams that work laterally with our China quality teams, and we're at the facilities on a regular basis. Our quality team goes there, and we have quality employees as well. Quality processes that manage any potential non-conformance and the ability to perform substantial analysis in our US battery lab. That includes in our audit process, and we break down batteries to make sure that everything's copacetic, no substitutions were used, and everything meets the drawings. The reality check is cost savings depend heavily on volume and stability of the design. Speed advantages disappear if the communication and iteration slow down, and that's usually what you get out of a direct China purchase or request. Quality benefits only exist with top-tier partners who have invested in a process that protects the customer. In practice, the companies that succeed offshore invest heavily in supplier management and keep strong internal engineering oversight and have a significant domestic capabilities. We have the capabilities to rework or correct things if needed, and we can also have the ability to inspect and dissect batteries as they come in. In summary, the main argument and the theme of this presentation is that cost and risk must be evaluated together. Bottom line is, offshore battery manufacturing isn't just a cost decision, it's a risk trade-off. You're typically exchanging what appears to be lower upfront costs for higher uncertainty in quality, timeline, supply, and long-term costs. For battery packs where safety, reliability, and iteration speed matter, it's much riskier than most initial spreadsheets suggest. Let's talk about.
Thank you, Anton.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, while Anton's going to review the questions that came in, I wanted to briefly mention some of the additional PCB-based products we offer here at EPIC. For more than 70 years, EPIC has designed and manufactured custom build to print electronics. Our expertise not only lies in battery packs, but in printed circuit boards, flex and rigid flex PCBs, overmolded and other types of cable assemblies, CNC machining through our sister company Metalcraft Machining, high reliability user interfaces, flexible heaters, and energy efficient fans and motors. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it back over to Anton to go through some of the questions that came in.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. Let me see here. Got a few in. Here's one. What are the minimum order quantities you're referring to? Well, minimum order quantities vary for different types of battery packs through different suppliers. And it's all contingent on the type of cell, the configuration, how many cells are in the battery pack, and the electronics that are applied. There's a lot of variables. So that needs to be determined up front with whoever you may be working with if you're going direct. And here's another one. How will you know if you're receiving batteries with counterfeit parts in them? Well, the answer to that is, unless you have an incoming inspection that confirms quality and breaks down samples of the batteries, you may never know unless there are problems out in the field and customer return failures that you bring back for analysis. But by then, it's too late. Let's see. How does a broker or purchasing direct from a China factory confirm the quality of the battery pack? Well, that depends on who you're working with. It would be your responsibility to determine what testing and inspection reports you require, and it would be your best interest to request or receive before the batteries are shipped from China to be sure everything that you requested is documented, including, you can ask for photos and what have you up front, but that's the only way that you can assure it from the China factory. I'm not sure that your broker can do that. Let's see. How would you manage a quality issue if purchasing direct from China factory? The answer, I'd say, unless you have an established relationship with the factory, it's going to be a difficult process. You can't ship batteries back into China. They won't accept them. So most likely it's detailed with emails, photos, phone calls. And keep in mind, you've paid for these up front, and China won't provide you a refund. They'll offer to make them, but it's an additional time to recover. And I don't know if you have that within your time frame. Let's see. I got time for one more here. What is the difference between shipping prototypes versus production? Well, when you're shipping lithium prototypes, there's a special exemption based on the quantity and weight. And you also need to contract with a freight forwarder who's going to accept these uncertified samples. If they get hung up, it's very likely you'll never see them. In the US, if the samples are considered class 9 hazardous and require appropriate metal cans with ground shipment only. And once you get into production, the UN 38.3 transportation is certified, and the batteries can be shipped with air and appropriate packaging and labeling, which that's also key, because anything can get stopped if it's not properly labeled. And then getting it out of customs is a very difficult process. That's all I see for now. Well, what I would say is that's all we have as far as questions. Keep the questions coming, and if we don't get to them, we'll be sure to respond via email. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining. I hope it was a little bit beneficial as far as information. And feel free to reach out to Epic with any questions. We'll respond quickly. Thank you.